So today, China is telling Donald Trump and the USA to stop panicking. Yes, and this is an actual story, an actual headline from CNBC. China accuses US of deliberately causing panic over rare earth controls, says it is open to talks. So basically, China's like, yo, Trump, can you tell your people and you yourself, of course, to stop acting like a child, come to the table and talk like adults. Essentially what this is all about. And this is just like the craziest thing. Every day I tune in, I'm just like, should I laugh? Should I cry? Like, how do we read this stuff? You know, China's telling Trump to stop panicking. And it's not just this, actually. We got news from Venezuela. We have more people leaving the Trump administration. You got Trump prosecuting more of his enemies. And you got a bunch of lawsuits coming from businesses against Trump. Let me go over this stuff. And again, let's start with this China thing, accusing the USA of panicking here. This is what it says. It says, China on Thursday accused the U.S. of creating panic over Beijing controls on rare earth minerals, okay? And basically what this all boils down to is Trump has a big talk, right? He's always like, oh, USA, we don't need anyone else in the world. We don't need trade. We're going to put tariffs on everyone, and you're going to give me all your money. And it's so ridiculous, you know? He thinks he can bully everyone around. And it's the other way you look at it as well is like they act like, you know, the abusive lover, where it's like, you know, if you leave me, if you don't trade with me, you won't find anyone else. There'll be no one else in the world for you. That's how they try to act. And it's just like, okay, like, what are you doing here, guys? And literally China's telling the Trump people to stop the panic. This is a quote, the U.S. interpretation seriously distorts and exaggerates China's measures, deliberately creating unnecessary misunderstanding and panic. That's coming from China. They also say this, which is actually kind of crazy. Quote, the accusations from the U.S. reveal that the U.S. is projecting its own behavior onto others. And they're accusing the Trump people of projecting. But honestly, guys, we look at their social media all the time, and you look at what the Trump people say, and it feels like every time the Trump people go on an attack, it's basically a confession. So Trump starts telling everyone, oh, you know, you're the one with the fraud mortgage, or you're the one that's a scammer, right? And it's really Trump talking about himself. It's always like that. And even China, like, these are statements here. The accusation from the U.S. revealed that the U.S. is projecting its own behavior onto others. And, you know, essentially what's going on here is sometimes, you know, countries need things from each other. That's what trade's all about. And from Trump's point of view is like, well, if there's all this, you know, money moving around and all these transactions, why can't I get my cut? And so Trump, you know, puts on the tariffs, tries to get a cut of every transaction, basically tax as much as he possibly can. And then if it's not a tax, it's a bribe. Can I get bribes to get anything through? And that's sort of where we're at. And it's just craziest point, though. China's telling Trump not to panic. Then this is from Besant. Besant says here, I wouldn't be surprised when we get an announcement like this week with China on the rare earths. You realize we have to be self-sufficient, or we have to be sufficient with our allies. Okay? So Besant's like, okay, fine. If we're not going to be buddy and friends with China, we're not going to trade with China, let's go make other friends. And so then you get these kind of news where, what, $40 billion to Argentina? For real. I know. I talked about this before because the way it depends on the headline. Some headlines say it's an additional 20 or another 20, but added up, we're looking at 40. U.S. support for Argentina could hit $40 billion. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said an additional $20 billion in private sector loans for Argentina could effectively double the value of the U.S. rescue plan, right? So I guess we're going to try to decouple from China is their plan. Try to buy Argentina, I guess, is the idea, and then start a war with Venezuela. That's our plan. This has also come out today, and it's crazy. It's hard to talk about everything because there's so much, right? Because any one of these things would be a massive scandal. But basically, Trump has said, I'm going to declare war on everyone all at the same time. And I'm going to piss off my friends in doing so and declare war on my friends, right? And extort money from my friends. Then you got this. U.S. Special Operations helicopters near Venezuela expand Caribbean mission. I keep reading about this stuff. I think there's 10,000 troops in the area, but I believe a lot of that's in Puerto Rico. But there's a naval battle group there, submarines. Now we're flying missions. I think the latest today was there were B-2 bombers, I think, something like that. I think it was B-2. I can't remember. There were bombers flying missions over Venezuela, basically just a show of force. And this was actually the biggest headline out as well. I mean, it's all important, but it looks like someone's stepping down. And I've said this so many times, guys, do not follow illegal orders, right? You do not want your name tied to the Trump people. Right here, top U.S. Admiral overseeing Caribbean deployments to step down. This is Admiral Alvin Holsey. Retirement as the head of Southern Command comes as the U.S. ramps up operations against alleged drug traffickers in Latin America. And we're just blowing up boats down there, and who knows, honestly, what's going on, other than it looks like Trump's starting to start a war, and then you have someone stepping down, and you can see it. I'll read it. The 4-star U.S. Navy admiral overseeing the ramp-up of military assets in the Caribbean will step down. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Thursday as the Trump administration intensifies its campaign against alleged drug traffickers in Latin America, right? Admiral Alvin Holsey, in cutting a typically a 4-year term. Okay, so he's supposed to be longer, I guess what it is, right? Because this has happened before where they put people for longer term and then you get out early, right? And I guess this is a quote from him. Holsey, who spent 37 years in the military, so that's a lot of experience, 37 years, said his retirement would be effective December 12th. Quote, the Southcon team has made lasting contributions to the defense of our nation and will continue to do so. I am confident that you will forge ahead, focused on your mission that strengthens our nation and ensures its longevity as a beacon of freedom around the globe. And I'm sorry to hear about Admiral Holsey stepping down. I think this is a long running theme among the Trump people is they're pushing out our best people. I'll just be frank with you guys. And this stuff isn't about politics at all. And I say that so many times on this channel, like it's not always a left-right issue. I just want competent, experienced people who serve the Constitution, serve the country, right? These are the people that you want. And, you know, the way everything Trump is doing is just like, how can I make money off stuff? How can I break things? And it's, you know, I hate to get more serious on you guys, but it just, I want to tell you the truth on this stuff, right? And even the China stuff, you know, like I said, do I laugh? Do I cry? Like, how do we read these things? Venezuelan then is now going to the UN and is like, I mean, what Trump is doing is illegal, right? Venezuela asked UN Security Council to say U.S. strikes are illegal. And here's a quote here. He asked the council to investigate the strikes to determine their illegal nature and issue a statement, quote, reaffirming the principle of unrestricted respect for sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity of states. So again, Trump's just blowing up boats. We don't really know what's going on. And then you have a top admiral stepping down. I mean, it's not a good sign. And then you have like these kind of stories where like fishermen, they're worried about, is their life in danger? Seriously. Venezuelan fishermen in fear after U.S. strikes on boats in the Caribbean. And, you know, if you need any, you know, further evidence that the Trump people are just insane, they keep trying to use the National Guard on own U.S. citizens, right? Appeals court won't let Trump deploy National Guard in Illinois for now. And I think that was moving the Texas National Guard to Illinois. And then I think they wanted to get Guard from California to maybe Oregon or Texas to Oregon. It's hard to keep track of all this stuff. It's just chaos all the time. And then now Trump is after John Bolton. I guess we're sending the prosecutors on him. And this is following James Comey, Letitia James. I think Brennan might be on the list. I was reading this. It's just, yeah, John Brennan, former CIA director, maybe is there also. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And I want to point to you, though, guys, that not everyone is going on with the Trump stuff, right? So the admiral stepped down. Now you got the Chamber of Commerce suing Trump over the H-1B visa thing. Major U.S. business group sues over Trump's $100,000 H-1 visa fee. And basically what it boils down to, if there's any kind of transaction at all, Trump wants his cut. In this case, he wants $100K for H-1B visas, which is obviously ridiculous. I think for any of these things, you know, China's advice is stop the panic, sit down like adults, have real conversations about this stuff. Because there are real conversations that we have about the visa system, right? I'll just be frank. It's slow. It favors certain kind of people over others. Trump wants to make it favor, you know, I guess people who are willing to pay the money. This is a sensitive topic because I know Americans want jobs. I completely get that. I totally get that. And so some people say it's being abused by companies who want to underpay people, which I can totally get. So that's why I'm acknowledging it. Other people say, well, we got to keep the system in place because there's just some jobs that Americans can't do, which I also think is reasonable. But in any of these things, right, instead of a reasonable conversation about this stuff, Trump's is like, well, I mean, just do what you want. Just pay me the fee. 100,000 fee, in fact. That's how crazy our system is. And then lately he's been going after universities. Recently MIT said no. This is my university, University of Pennsylvania. Actually, Trump went there also. But they're saying no. I think USC also said no recently. Basically, just Trump wants more control over everything. That's what it ends up being. And then, he'll cut programs, services that people need. There's so much news to go over every day. I just want to make sure you guys are informed on this stuff. FEMA now, I guess the idea is Trump wants to shift the burden from the federal government to states. But there's some states out there, guys, that they're basically taker states, right? You got the states, you could say donor states, like, states that are surplus or however you want to call it. They give more money to the system than they take in. And then you got the red states, oftentimes are going to be taking more. And I think this FEMA thing is going to hurt a lot of red states, really hurt a lot of Trump people. It'll hurt blue states too. I want to acknowledge it basically hurts everyone. And I don't necessarily want to say this is just a blue-red issue. It hurts everyone. If there's a natural disaster, you want this national unity that we're in it together. We're going to help out each other, right? But from Trump's point of view, he's just like, this is all about winners and losers. I want me to be the only winner and all the rest are going to be losers. So this stuff is disturbing. There's so many things that are disturbing with this thing. And then you got this kind of stuff, which is why the shutdown is so hard to resolve, because you can't trust anything that Trump says, right? You just can't, right? So this is what it is. Trump's unilateral spending cuts complicate the shutdown deal. Democrats want guarantees that President Trump will not continue to claw back spending, ignoring any agreement they strike. But he has promised to keep defying Congress. He says it's how our system is supposed to work, right? Congress has power of the purse, and things get passed through Congress. It takes a lot of time. People debate on things. You write up bills. You come up with ways that people pass through legislation, right? And then Trump says, like, well, I'm just gonna do it by myself. I'm just gonna do whatever executive order. I'm gonna ignore the courts, right? These things, and then we get this crazy situation that we have now. In a normally functioning system, I mean, Trump would be moved long ago for any of the number of things that he's been doing. But it's just crazy. And I think what it's going to end up being, and I keep saying it, is the midterms and the following election will just be a referendum on Trump. So I'm waiting for midterms here. I don't think any of this stuff is sustainable. And honestly, I'm just hoping things don't break too bad. That's why I point out, say, like, we'll just use the example of the FEMA thing. Or Trump starts something in Venezuela, and then you feel like you're stuck down there fighting whatever we're fighting over. But it's crazy. And, I didn't think I'd ever be at the point where it's like, man, China's even telling USA to calm down, stop panic. So that's what's going on, guys. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this stuff. And I'll catch you on the next video.